anything.
Investigators say this attack appears to have been carefully planned for a long time.
Have you ever met her?
I know her.
You know her?
Yeah.
Well, we don't. We're going to meet her now. Here's Sherry.
"28 disturbing TV shows, 7 levels. Not all TV shows are comforting and relaxing. We'll start with the more tame and well-known shows before digging into dark, unexpected, and deeply disturbing ones you have never even heard of.
Oh man, I wasn't doing anything. Get us through this. I wasn't doing anything.
Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Temptation Island. Temptation Island may position itself as a social experiment, but the very thin line between relationship test and televised emotional warfare blurs quickly.
Find out as these 4 couples embark on a once-in-a-lifetime journey here on Temptation Island.
The premise is straightforward. Couples at a crossroads are separated into gender-divided villas surrounded by singles tasked with seducing them and convincing them to cheat on their significant others. The host, Mark L. Wahlberg, frames it as a chance to find clarity, yet the show's DNA is engineered for total chaos.
Bye!
It was a struggle doing shit with you!
Oh, it was such a struggle, but you still was in my bed every day, right?
The show originally aired in 2001 before being revived in 2019, and then again on Netflix in 2024, and every revival got more and more volatile. Partners live separately, endure real-time footage of their significant other's flirtations, and face weekly bonfires where manipulated clips stoke paranoia. But the Spanish version took it to a whole other level. The 2025 season of La Isla de las Tentaciones turned Jose Carlos Montoya into an unwitting viral star for a horrifying reason. The host forced Montoya to watch his girlfriend, Anita Williams, intimately engage with another man on a live broadcast, a clear humiliation of the poor guy. Horrified and devastated, Montoya sprinted across a beach, shorts clutched in despair as the host futilely shouted "Montoya, por favor," to stop him from doing the one thing the producers really wanted to happen. That single moment, viewed over 224 million times, sums up the show's core appeal. Raw, unfiltered emotional collapse of people who should not be on television. The show's defenders argue it exposes relationship flaws, but they overlook the psychological toll. Montoya's third televised betrayal became a meme, reducing genuine anguish to entertainment, and the world just laughs along. Black Mirror. Few shows have captured the dark underbelly of technology and society quite like Black Mirror. The series, built as an anthology exploring many dystopian realities where humanity's worst instincts collide with unchecked technological advancements.
This isn't me! Look what you're doing to me!
Each episode is a standalone narrative, yet they all share a hauntingly plausible premise that the tools we create to improve our lives could just as easily destroy them. Ever since its debut, Black Mirror has been unflinching in its exploration of controversial and disturbing themes. The very first episode, the national anthem, set the tone with a pretty grotesque premise. The British Prime Minister must engage in an act of bestiality on live television to save a kidnapped princess.
Prime Minister Michael Gallagher, my life. My life depends on you.
The episode shocked audiences worldwide and was banned in some regions for its graphic and unsettling content. But the show has become a real target for censorship in hyper-traditional countries like China and Saudi Arabia. The episode Nosedive, which depicts a society where social status is dictated by app-based ratings, was particularly controversial in China. Its parallels to the country's real-life social credit system led to its suppression. The episode's depiction of societal control through technology just hit too close to home. Saudi Arabia has also reportedly banned episodes that delve into themes of authoritarianism or challenge traditional societal norms. Other episodes have also sparked outrage for their grim narratives and the disturbing way they make viewers feel. Shut Up and Dance forces viewers to sympathize with the protagonist, only to reveal his horrifying crimes, leaving audiences feeling complicit in his downfall. White Bear critiques society's obsession with punishment by turning justice into a sadistic spectacle. Basically, Black Mirror thrives on discomfort, holding up a mirror to humanity's darkest instincts. There's no question that the show might end up becoming one of the most disturbing shows ever created. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. In the late 1990s, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was one of a handful of supernatural shows that was must-watch TV. The show followed Buffy Summers, a high schooler and chosen one, destined to battle vampires and demons while navigating the challenges of growing up.
I'm Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, and you are?
But 2 episodes tested the limits of its fans. In 1999, Earshot aired as part of Season 3. The episode centered on Buffy suddenly gaining telepathic abilities and overhearing a student's thoughts.
This time tomorrow, I'll kill you all.
Soon after, a lockdown ensues with Buffy confronting Jonathan in a clock tower, rifle in hand. But it turns out that he planned not a massacre. In fact, the real threat was a lunch lady poisoning students. The only problem was that 1 week before the episode was scheduled to air, the Columbine High School massacre occurred in a sinister mirror of the content of the episode.
Investigators say this attack appears to have been carefully planned for a long time.
The WB decided to pull the episode from release, eventually airing it 5 months later. Actor Seth Green called the delay understandable, but criticized the decision to focus on media over gun reform. Years later, in 2002, the writers decided to go even darker. Season 6's Seeing Red featured a scene in which Spike, a fan-favorite vampire with a soul arc, cornered a wounded Buffy in her bathroom, attempting to force himself on her to prove her love for him. She fought him off, but the scene's brutality shocked fans.
Did he hurt you?
He tried. He didn't.
And James Marsters, the actor behind Spike, knew it would. He argued against the whole plotline, insisting that viewers would internalize Buffy's trauma and never forgive the character. But the producers pushed forward. Marsters later called the shot his darkest professional day, requiring therapy to get him through it. To this day, it remains arguably the most hated moment in Buffy's history for fans, a horribly out-of-character moment that soiled the show. All My Baby's Mamas.
Check out All My Baby's Mamas, a reality show starring rapper Shawty Low and the 10 women who had 11 of his kids.
In early 2013, Oxygen Network began developing All My Baby's Mamas, a reality special centered on Atlanta rapper Shawty Low, who fathered 11 children with 10 women. Gangsta. Promotional clips leaked online framing the mothers through reductive labels like Jealous Baby Mama, Shady Baby Mama, and Baby Mama from Hell, while introducing his 19-year-old girlfriend. As soon as the clips leaked, public backlash erupted immediately. Media commentator Sabrina Lamb launched a Change.org petition calling the show child exploitation and condemning its use of the term baby mama as dehumanizing. The petition amassed over 37,000 signatures, while the NAACP and Parents Television Council denounced the project as grotesquely irresponsible. Critics argued the show normalized unprotected sex, fractured parenting, and toxic stereotypes, particularly for Black families already underrepresented in the media. But most people were pointing out just how bad their parenting was. Their father couldn't even remember all their names.
There was a countdown where he tried to remember the names of his children, and then the blatant message is unprotected sex is good.
Oxygen initially defended the special as a cultural conversation starter, but canceled it weeks later without airing a single episode, citing a routine casting review. Behind the scenes, advertisers faced pressure from advocacy groups like Color of Change, which warned of boycotts that would come if it aired. Though unaired, the leak footage lingered online, exposing the show's exploitative core. Women reduced to caricatures, children treated as props, and a father framed as a hapless patriarch. Shawty Lowe's 2016 death sealed the show's fate. Despite his constant promises the show would come back, it never did. Level 2. NYPD Blue, 1993 to 2005. When ABC premiered NYPD Blue on September 21, 1993, over 50 local stations refused to air its debut episode. The gritty police drama followed New York detectives navigating violent crimes and messy personal lives. But this was a groundbreaking show, the first primetime network drama in U.S. television history to feature partial nudity and raw, foul-mouthed dialogue.
What is the matter with you? Stop following me around! Will you get out of here?
Critics like the American Family Association's Donald Wildman organized boycotts, claiming the show threatened morals. But ABC countered with viewer advisories, scrambling to secure advertisers amid protests. When it aired, it was clear why people were so upset.
I'd rather be dead than walking around with that mop on my head.
The series pushed boundaries even from its pilot, which featured a graphic scene between two officers, with camera angles lingering on bare skin. Though tame by modern standards, this was a major shock in 1993, breaking major network norms which had intense regulations, even for cleavage. ABC affiliates in conservative markets like Tallahassee rejected the entire season. Even supportive stations faced backlash a decade into the show's run when a 2003 episode showed Detective Connie McDowell's nude backside during a non-shower scene. The FCC fined ABC $1.2 million for airing such alleged filth. But the show wasn't just controversial for its content, but also for its characters. One of the lead characters was a volatile racist and recovering alcoholic whose flaws deepened over 12 seasons. There was nothing about the character softened, likable, nothing for audiences to embrace. And these risks paid off. Despite the controversies, the show earned 26 Emmy nominations in its first year alone and became ABC's longest-running drama. NYPD Blue forced broadcast TV to mature and keep up with cable, even as regulators and protesters scrambled to contain what they saw as filth. The Boondocks. In the early 2000s, Adult Swim made a name for itself by deliberately courting highly controversial and weird adult cartoons. But The Boondocks was perhaps more controversial than any other show in the lineup. The series followed the Freeman family, 10-year-old radical Huey, his gangsta-obsessed brother Riley, and their clueless grandfather, navigating a mostly white suburb. Its opening scene might set the tone better than anything else I can say. Jesus was black, Ronald Reagan was the devil, and the government is lying about nothing.
Excuse me, everyone, I have a brief announcement to make. Jesus was black, Ronald Reagan was the devil, and the government is lying about.
The show pulled no punches, producing episodes tackling serious themes like police brutality and racism. In fact, one of the lead characters, Uncle Ruckus, is a perfect depiction of internalized racism, a black man who claimed a slave ship fell on my family tree while idolizing Confederates. The show's satire spared no one, including legends. In Return of the King, Martin Luther King Jr. survives assassination, but now he's full of rage, having seen the state of modern black culture. His use of the N-word drew rage from basically every corner. Even Al Sharpton demanded apologies. Yet Cartoon Network stood by the episode, calling it thought-provoking. But some lines just couldn't be crossed. The Hunger Strike was an episode that showed Huey protesting BET's $5 slave video award by starving himself, only for the network to air his suffering as reality TV. The very next episode, the Uncle Ruckus reality show, also took on BET, criticizing the show as exploiting black trauma for profit.
Not everyone is in support of the boycott. Listen to what this BET supporter had to say.
Every time a black baby is born, I'd give him a plasma TV and one channel, BET. Slap it right on the ceiling over the crib.
The episodes were so harsh and aggressive on the BET network and its leadership that Turner ended up shelving both of them indefinitely to avoid lawsuits. They eventually leaked via Canadian broadcasts and DVDs, but the creator, Aaron McGruder, stands by everything he said in the episodes. Jackass.
My name is Johnny Knoxville, and this is the High Five.
In October 2000, MTV aired a pilot with a grinning Johnny Knoxville stuffed into a cannon, warning viewers not to mimic the show's stunts. Few listened. Jackass became a lightning rod for both outrage and adoration, blending extreme physical danger, public pranks, and grotesque humor into a 24-minute weekly spectacle.
He fell for the soup!
The show's cast, all skateboarders, thrill seekers, and self-described idiots, filmed themselves enduring tasers, leaping into cactus patches, and swallowing live goldfish. Ratings quickly soared as audiences tuned in for the visceral thrill of watching Steve-O staple his scrotum to his leg or Ryan Dunn launch himself from a slingshot into a shopping cart. The dumbassery was the selling point, and the controversy just made it more appealing for the audience. Senator Joe Lieberman condemned the show in 2001, calling it exploitative and blaming it for copycat injuries, including a 13-year-old who died attempting a DIY stunt. MTV soon faced lawsuits in instances where a jet ski left a bystander with broken ribs. But Jackass could not be killed. The more controversy, the more popular it became. However, MTV did take the threats seriously. Episodes featured stunts so brutal, like the human barbecue or the tooth pull, that MTV later had to re-edit or remove them from release entirely. Gumball Rally, a chaotic road race special, was heavily cut down due to dangerous driving footage, and other segments also faced censorship. But that's what was so disturbing about the show, the mix of pain and absurdity. The movies took it even further. Paper cuts between fingers and toes, a toy car lodged in a rectum for an X-ray gag, or letting an unchained bear get close to an actual member of the cast. It's raw, unscripted chaos, but it's the friendships that keep people coming back for more. The same way you will keep coming back to our videos if you hit that subscribe button. Level 3. Ghost Watch.
Stop it! Stop it, Susie!
On Halloween night, 1992, the BBC aired a live paranormal investigation from a London council house hosted by trusted broadcaster Michael Parkinson.
Tonight, television is going ghost hunting in an unprecedented scientific experiment we hope to show you, for the first time, irrefutable proof that ghosts really do exist.
Cameras followed Sarah Green as she met the Early family, whose daughters reported violent encounters with a ghost named Pipes, so called for its habit of banging pipes. Viewers watched as 10-year-old Suzanne developed sudden facial scratches, spoke in a guttural voice, and vanished into a basement where a pedophile had supposedly once hanged himself. Craig Charles interviewed neighbors about the house's history of infant murders, while studio experts debated nationwide psychic feedback from millions watching. A call to the studio revealed that Pipes was actually the ghost of the pedophile in the basement, and over time it becomes clear that he has the power to invade the homes of the general public. The broadcast ended in chaos. Green was dragged into darkness, the studio lights failed, and a possessed Parkinson muttered nursery rhymes as screens cut to Match of the Day. Over 11 million viewers believed they'd witnessed authentic supernatural events, until credits revealed it was a pre-recorded drama.
And if you were with us for our Ghost Watch earlier, may I reassure you that it was just a story, and all's well here at Television Centre.
The BBC switchboard received 30,000 calls, including reports of pregnant women being put into labor from stress and a vicar accusing the network of summoning demons. 5 days later, 18-year-old Martin Denham, who'd become obsessed with the show's pipe-knocking ghost, died by suicide. His parents blamed Ghostwatch for his deteriorating mental state, citing his newfound fear of their home's heating system. The British Medical Journal later documented cases of PTSD in children who watched, with symptoms including night terrors and bedwetting. The Broadcasting Standards Council condemned the BBC for cultivating menace through realistic touches, including the use of real presenters, a genuine phone-in number, and minimal disclaimers. The show has never aired on UK TV since, with Stephen Volk noting the irony. The BBC's credibility sold the lie, then destroyed it. Decades later, its legacy persists in streaming horror platforms and TikTok clips that still trigger visceral dread. Man vs. Beast. It was a spectacle that promised to redefine reality television, but ended up sparking outrage instead. Man vs. Beast pitted humans against animals in bizarre competitions. The premise was asking one key question: could humans' skill and strength triumph over nature?
One massive beast will go head-to-head against a team of humans.
And the only way to determine that was to engage in stunts as surreal as they were unsettling. We're talking about a bear competing in a hot dog eating contest, a gymnast competing in a hanging contest against a chimpanzee, and 44 dwarves trying to outpull an elephant in towing a DC-10 aircraft. It has to be seen to be believed. The show drew millions of viewers, but also a wave of condemnation that questioned its ethics and humanity. Critics attacked the program as exploitative and degrading, with animal rights groups branding it the sickest TV show ever made.
Man vs. Beast was an excitingly stupid experiment that somehow got greenlit twice.
The challenges often placed wild animals in unnatural and stressful situations, reducing them to mere tools for entertainment. Even viewers noted visible discomfort in some animals, such as the elephant straining under the weight of the DC-10 challenge. Organizations like Born Free Foundation, PETA, and the RSPCA condemned the show for promoting animal exploitation and trivializing wildlife. They argued that forcing animals into unnatural performances compromised their welfare and sent a dangerous message about domination over nature. ITV's planned British adaptation faced similar resistance, with protests from over a dozen animal rights groups ensuring it never aired. Granada Productions defended their practices, claiming the animals performed tasks they were naturally predisposed to, though nobody ever saw an elephant towing a plane on their own free will. The Secret Diary of Desmond Pfeiffer. In the fall of 1998, UPN aired The Secret Diary of Desmond Pfeiffer, a sitcom set during the Civil War era. The show followed Desmond Pfeiffer, a black British nobleman fleeing debt who becomes Abraham Lincoln's shrewd butler, navigating a White House filled with bumbling historical figures, including Lincoln as a lecherous oaf, Mary Todd Lincoln as a scheming drunk, and Ulysses S. Grant as a perpetually intoxicated general.
I'm back!
Episodes revolved around Lincoln's telegraph escapades, cross-dressing escapes from Confederate territory, and absurd diplomatic mishaps, all while Desmond rolled his eyes at the chaos.
It's okay, sir. You're in shock.
Sensitivity wasn't something this show was interested in. Naturally, before the premiere, African-American groups, including the NAACP's Los Angeles chapter, protested outside Paramount Studios, condemning the show's perceived trivialization of slavery. The backlash quickly intensified over the unaired pilot, which reportedly opened with a hanging in England and depicted Desmond being kidnapped and sent to America as an enslaved person. Though the episodes that did air avoided direct references to slavery, the premise itself, of a black man serving a buffoonish Lincoln during the Civil War, drew accusations of historical insensitivity.
You're just a black man pretending to be a white man.
In reaction to the controversy, UPN delayed the pilot, replacing it with a less provocative episode, but the damage was done. The show was tainted. Critics called the humor juvenile and obscene, but some people did see that the show was not really making fun of slavery, but satirizing Bill Clinton's many scandals. Unfortunately, the Civil War setting made the satire bomb badly. Ratings cratered too. The debut episode ranked 116th out of 125 shows that week, and UPN axed it after 4 episodes. 9 episodes were filmed, but 5 remain unaired and largely lost, including the controversial pilot. Years later, the series still tops worst TV lists, despite most people having never seen it. Heil, honey, I'm home. In 1990, a British sitcom came on the air, never to be seen again. And for good reason. Heil, Honey, I'm Home reimagined 1938 Berlin as a 1950s American-style suburb where Hitler and Eva Braun were a bumbling sitcom couple who constantly bickered with their Jewish neighbors, the Goldsteins. The premise was already ridiculous, and the unaired episodes leaned even further into the absurdity, featuring Hitler practicing his invasion speeches from his balcony, stealing milk from the Goldsteins' fridge, and hosting British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain for dinner while hiding a peace treaty in the kitchen.
You forget about Czechoslovakia. You'll think, hey, this Adolf Hitler is a regular guy.
The show really leaned into the idea of it being a lost American sitcom, complete with canned laughter and New York accents, aiming to parody sitcom tropes rather than the Third Reich itself.
You may be big stuff in Germany, but I knew you and you were just a house painter.
It's since been called perhaps the world's most tasteless situation comedy, which was kind of the whole point. But scenes like Hitler slapping his wrist while whining, "I've been a very, very bad Hitler," or the Goldsteins joking about Nazi salutes sparked immediate backlash.
I'm a very, very bad Hitler.
Jewish groups condemned the trivialization of the Holocaust, with the Board of Deputies of British Jews calling it distasteful and even offensive. The show's writer, Jeff Atkinson, argued the satire targeted Western appeasement of Hitler, but the execution overshadowed any intent. Hitler was portrayed as a lovable buffoon, reducing all of his notorious historical atrocities to punchlines. The only episode that ever aired followed an episode of Dad's Army, a British World War II sitcom with a very different tone, told from the perspective of the Allies. The show was abruptly canceled shortly after. And despite only one episode ever airing, clips from unaired installments have leaked and reveal even darker subplots, including Hitler plotting to murder the Goldsteins, which is a very jarring shift from the pilot's light slapstick. The show was likened to a failed version of Mel Brooks' The Producers, which openly mocked Hitler through satire without ever trying to humanize him. But while Atkinson and the actors defended the project as a risk worth taking, the pilot's legacy endures as a misstep in edgy comedy. Nobody wants to laugh with Hitler. Who's Your Daddy?
We've recreated this woman's difficult search in a way that allows her to get to know her dad before finally being reunited with him.
In January 2005, Fox aired a reality show so controversial that adoption organizations protested before it even premiered. Who's Your Daddy challenged a 26-year-old adopted girl, TJ Myers, to guess which of 8 men was her biological father.
I'm your dad. I'm your dad. I'm your dad.
Which one are you?
If she was correct, she'd win $100,000. If wrong, a stranger would pocket the cash. The premise turned what has always been a deeply personal search for identity into a televised guessing game, complete with staged interactions and emotional manipulation tactics designed to mislead Myers into choosing the wrong man.
I feel that you're not my father.
The show's marketing leaned into the sensationalism of the premise, billing it as the most dramatic reunion event ever televised. And that's why adoption advocates hated the show. Protesters argue that the overly dramatic show reduced complex family bonds to reality TV theatrics. A North Carolina Fox affiliate refused to air the special entirely, replacing it with a documentary on adoptive families. So, what on the show was so controversial? The contestants, including Meyer's actual father, were coached and encouraged to lean into stereotypes, sharing fabricated backstories and exaggerated traits to throw off her judgment. But Myers later admitted she didn't grasp why adoption groups were upset, calling her participation naive even as the show framed her reunion as primetime entertainment. She didn't really see any problem with the setup, but critics did. The reviews constantly point out the inherent cruelty in the premise. If Myers failed, a stranger profited from her vulnerability. When she correctly identified her father, the win felt hollow, overshadowed by the show's circus-like execution. Turning something so important into a game just felt strange and disturbing.
That my father is Charlie.
The ratings flopped pretty badly, forcing Fox to shelve the remaining 5 episodes after airing only 1. Fox Reality Channel later aired the unaired episodes during a Father's Day marathon and even greenlit Who's Your Mommy, a short-lived spin-off where contestants searched for biological mothers. Both series faded into obscurity, but the network made a hefty profit from the exploitation. Level 4. Jerry Springer. 1990s daytime TV was extremely chaotic as it was, but the Jerry Springer Show carved its own niche by prioritizing shock value above all else. What began as a sober political discussion forum in 1991 quickly devolved into a carnival of fistfights, screaming matches, and tabloid-ready freak shows, all thanks to executive producer Richard Dominic, a former tabloid editor who prioritized ratings over restraint.
You ever met her?
I know her.
You know her? Yeah. Well, we don't. We're going to meet her now. Here's Sherry.
Backstage, guests would be plied with alcohol, coached to provoke each other, and thrust into fabricated and entirely made-up conflicts, all while audiences chanted Springer's name like a wrestling match. But none of it could ever live up to the May 1998 episode, I Married a Horse.
But before we talk to Mark, let's meet his wife. Please welcome her to the show, Mark's wife.
Producers had received a 3 a.m. call from Mark, a man who claimed he'd abandoned his wife and daughters to marry Pixel, a Shetland pony. The producers obviously saw this as a dream, greenlighting the segment immediately despite its blatant bestiality and inevitable controversy. The studio audience had no idea what the topic that day would be, and producers swore crew members to secrecy to preserve the surprise. So when Pixel was led on stage in frilly panties, the audience went crazy. Mark detailed his intimate relations with the animal, kissed it repeatedly, and showed photos of the pony in lingerie as Springer quipped, "It's a stable relationship." The episode aired once in New York before the inevitable backlash exploded. Critics called it the most vile, grotesque freak show on television, while politicians like Bill Bennett condemned its repugnant glorification of animal abuse. Networks yanked the episode from syndication immediately, but Dominic was thrilled by the response, declaring it everything I ever wanted. The controversy just underlined the show's ethical vacuum, which is what made it such a hit. Previous episodes had featured Klansmen brawling with activists and a man who self-mutilated his genitals, but I Married a Horse crossed into true illegality, showcasing acts that violated bestiality laws. Yet for Springer's team, the line between tragedy and content was so thin, it didn't really exist. Dollhouse. Imagine a world where human beings are stripped of their identities, reprogrammed like machines, and rented out for any desire, romantic, criminal, or worse. That's the premise of Dollhouse. The show followed Echo, a member of an underground network of actives whose personalities are erased and replaced for high-paying clients. These dolls live in a pristine facility masquerading as a spa, their minds wiped after each mission, leaving them in a childlike state between assignments. Echo's gradual awakening, retaining her memories despite repeated brainwashing, became the show's narrative backbone, but its true focus was the ethical rot festering beneath this sleek, pretty surface.
Now that you're here.
Do you trust me?
With my life.
The Dollhouse's operations were designed to blur the lines between consent and coercion. Actives were marketed as volunteers who traded 5 years of servitude for financial security or erased trauma. Yet the system was clearly built to exploit their vulnerability. Clients used them for everything from assassinations to intimate fantasies, reducing human beings to disposable tools. That's what made the show so disturbing. The show didn't flinch from implications of exploitation, with actives often imprinted with personalities designed to fulfill clients' darkest urges. As one critic said, it confronted the uncomfortable nature of trafficking and slavery head-on with no reluctance. The lack of clear heroes or villains made the show extremely rich in themes and thought-provoking story, but it was commercially risky and massively off-putting. Audiences struggled to root for characters complicit in dehumanization, while Fox reportedly grew uneasy with the premise's real-world parallels to sex work and abuse. They wanted something more like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This was far too real for them. The show was canceled after 2 seasons due to declining ratings and a lack of interest from the network, but the show quickly developed a cult following with fans who loved the boldness of its themes. The Swan.
I was the only swan in the history of the show that was that had 3 parts, and I had the most surgeries of any.
In 2004, Fox was promoting a brand new reality show titled The Swan. The marketing promised a modern fairy tale, promising to transform ugly ducklings into confident beauties. But the way it would do that was anything but a fairy tale.
No way.
Each episode followed 2 women who were isolated for 3 months, barred from mirrors and subjected to multiple simultaneous cosmetic procedures, including rhinoplasties, liposuction, and breast augmentations, before competing in a pageant where only the most improved advanced. Winners would face a finale judged on their new appearance in swimsuits and gowns, with one crowned the Swan. The premise of the show was horrible enough, but it turns out that none of these contestants knew what they were signing on for. The women were recruited with promises of therapy and self-care, but were blindsided by the competition element, unaware they'd be judged against others until filming began. To ensure they would be willing to take part, producers staged before photos using unflattering clothing and glasses to exaggerate their ugliness, while surgeons pressured participants into additional surgeries, even chastising those who resisted, like Tanya Cook, who refused a nose job to keep a genetic family trait.
It was pretty traumatic when I found that out.
But not everybody resisted. The doctors performed over 200 procedures in 2 weeks, pushing medical boundaries for dramatic transformations and ratings. Even post-surgery, contestants endured intense workouts while still bandaged, with one trainer admitting he feared they'd die from complications of the surgery. At no point did anybody consider the psychological toll on the women. All therapists were sidelined, and the show's creator doubled as a life coach, urging more surgeries to be performed on the women. By the time the show was finished, the participants faced costly upkeep for maintenance and repair on their surgeries and long-term health issues, all of which were raised at the time.
I ended up having to get it fixed on my own, out of our own pocket. That's a lot of money. that could have gone to something else.
Public backlash was immediate. Critics slammed the show as hurtful and repellent, accusing it of reducing women's worth to their looks and glorifying risky surgery. Advocacy groups condemned its exploitation of women's insecurities, while media outlets widely labeled it as one of reality TV's lowest points. Despite drawing 9 million viewers, the controversy overwhelmed its ratings success. Fox canceled The Swan after 2 seasons. Yes, 2. The Benny Hill Show. In the late 1960s and 70s, few television programs captured audiences quite like The Benny Hill Show. At its peak, more than 21 million people in the UK tuned in to watch Benny Hill's slapstick sketches, parodies, and double entendres. It was a comedy juggernaut broadcast in over 100 countries, making Hill one of TV's highest-paid stars of his day. The catchy Yakety Sax theme song became instantly recognizable, underscoring the show's frantic chase scenes, which were almost always Hill being pursued by scantily clad women. But as popular as the show became, it also drew increasingly loud criticism. By the late 1970s and early 80s, feminist voices were rising louder, calling out the show's portrayal of women as objects. Sketches regularly featured older men leering at young women, chasing them in exaggerated high-speed pursuits. The introduction of Hill's Angels, a troupe of attractive women performing provocative dance routines, just made it more impossible to ignore the show's reputation for objectifying women. As feminist sentiment gained momentum through the 70s and 80s, critics increasingly condemned the show's sexism and misogyny. Comedian Ben Elton famously accused Benny Hill's humor of contributing to harmful stereotypes, and even linked it to broader societal issues like harassment and misogyny.
You know, the politics was kind of sub-Benny Hill. It was weird stuff. I'm a weapon and my loving so cool. Every woman in the world wants a taste of my tool. I'm the best, forget the rest. If you don't, you're a fool. Because I'm at 86 positions and I'm hung like a mule. Now, what is all that about?
By the late 1980s, despite still high ratings, Thames Television faced mounting pressure to address the criticism. The show was expensive to produce, each episode costing around £450,000, and its humor was increasingly seen as outdated and offensive.
And your husband? He's just gone for a pony and trap.
By 1989, Thames finally canceled production altogether, citing declining ratings and rising costs. But many believe the real reason was to appease critics who saw the show as incompatible with changing social attitudes toward gender equality. Benny Hill was devastated and never fully recovered from losing his platform. He spoke often about a comeback that never materialized. The Morton Downey Jr. Show. In 1987, a new and highly chaotic show burst onto screens across America. The Morton Downey Jr. Show.
A nation of freedom of religion. Are you a religion? Are you a religion? No. Then you have no freedom.
Taped in Secaucus, New Jersey, the syndicated program featured its chain-smoking host berating guests while blowing cigarette smoke in their faces and orchestrating shouting matches between activists like Al Sharpton and Roy Innis that escalated into physical brawls. Audience members, dubbed loudmouths, cheered from bleachers flanking a podium shaped like a gaping cartoon mouth. Downey was openly conservative and wildly used inflammatory words to try and cause controversy, labeling opponents pablum-puking liberals while stoking racial tensions and LGBTQ+ debates. During one segment, he introduced his HIV-positive gay brother to gauge the audience reaction, later admitting fear of viewer backlash given his long history of attacking just about every minority group he could. Downey's rhetoric was so extreme and controversial that producers had to install metal detectors after guests and attendees grew increasingly volatile, with bomb threats occasionally evacuating the studio. But that was exactly what Downey wanted. He wore fur coats during animal rights debates and wrapped himself in the American flag when challenging critics of U.S. policy. He wanted to upset people, but then he went a little too far. In 1989, Downey claimed neo-Nazis attacked him in a San Francisco airport bathroom, shaving part of his head and painting a backwards swastika on his face. But investigators noted the reversed symbol suggested that it was self-inflicted, probably using a mirror, while airport staff found no evidence of the altercation. As advertisers fled and stations shifted the show to graveyard slots, Downey admitted to producers that he made the whole thing up for publicity. The program collapsed months later, leaving behind a blueprint for combat-oriented media that led to Jerry Springer's chair-throwing theatrics, and eventually to the performative outrage of modern cable news.
I'm talking. I'll let you talk in a minute. I'll let you talk in a minute.
Downey died in 2001 from lung cancer, leaving behind a legacy of deliberate, orchestrated rage. Level 5. Who Wants to Marry a Multi-Millionaire? In February 2000, Fox aired Who Wants to Marry a Multi-Millionaire, a 2-hour spectacle where 50 women competed to marry an unseen multi-millionaire during a live televised wedding.
50 women from all parts of the globe have gathered here at the Las Vegas Hilton, hoping to marry our mysterious multi-millionaire.
The Bachelor, later revealed to be 42-year-old Rick Rockwell, evaluated contestants through swimsuit rounds and rapid-fire questions, all while hidden in shadow. Darva Conger, a 34-year-old ER nurse and military veteran, ended up as the winner after a surreal final round where she pleaded her case in a wedding dress without ever meeting the man she was due to marry. The show drew 23 million viewers but unraveled immediately. Rockwell's past surfaced in the media, revealing a 1991 restraining order from ex-fiancée Debbie Goyne, who accused him of physical abuse, threatens to kill her, and signing harassing emails as Ira, a sinister nod to notorious murderer Ira Einhorn. Fox admitted that Rockwell disclosed the restraining order but dismissed it as a non-issue, despite the fact he would be marrying a woman who would not know him until they were legally married. Conger, who had no clue about his history, described feeling shell-shocked during the ceremony and was repulsed when he emerged wearing only a towel in their post-wedding hotel room. Their honeymoon involved separate cabins and a chaperone. Days later, Conger sought an annulment, testifying in court that Rockwell misrepresented himself and producers failed to vet him. Fox canceled reruns during the public backlash while the FCC investigated false claims about Rockwell's wealth. The branding promised a multi-millionaire when his net worth was just $2 million. Conger didn't get away easily either. She faced intense media slut-shaming, posing for Playboy to reclaim control of her narrative, and later became an anesthesiologist. Rockwell, exposed as a struggling comedian with a totally fabricated career, vanished from public view altogether. Networks scrapped similar marriage-themed reality concepts for years, wary of legal blowback and ethical scrutiny, leaving this single show a relic of a pretty horrific exploitative time. Naked and Afraid. Stripped of clothes, comfort, and dignity, Naked and Afraid thrusts two strangers into some of the world's harshest environments for 21 days. The reality show pairs a man and a woman who must survive with no tools except for one item each: a knife, a fire starter, or something similar. From arid deserts to predator-filled jungles, the contestants are forced to face not just environmental dangers, but also the psychological strain of vulnerability and exposure.
Here we go!
Just another Tuesday. Being naked isn't really a thing to me. There's less tight things on you. It's more comfortable.
Now, here's the problem the show has. The nudity is kind of integral to the premise. It amplifies the challenge, stripping contestants of basic protection against the elements: thorns, sunburns, biting insects, you get the idea. And it forces them to confront their insecurities head-on.
How you doing?
Hi.
I'm Charlie.
Danielle, so
Danielle.
nice to meet you.
Fancy meeting you. Fancy meeting you in the Colombian jungle.
Yeah, of course.
Yet, for viewers, the near-constant display of blurred bodies can feel unsettling. While Discovery insists that the show isn't exploitative, critics have made the case that its voyeuristic nature borders on extremely uncomfortable viewing. After all, the pixelation doesn't hide everything. Backsides and other parts remain exposed, making it one of the most skin-heavy shows on American television. Yet the show's rawness has sparked global controversy even outside of the US. In Pakistan, it was outright banned by the Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority for being obscene and vulgar. Officials cited public complaints and even invoked laws against indecent content to justify their decision. Beyond the nudity, Naked and Afraid delves into some seriously harrowing territory with its portrayal of suffering. Contestants often endure severe injuries, dehydration, and illness. Some have been shown vomiting or collapsing from exhaustion, and not once do producers intervene to try and protect them. The show is truly just them against the world. MPD Psycho. The manga MPD Psycho follows Yosuke Kobayashi, a detective whose fractured psyche splits into personalities like Kazuhiko Amamiya, a methodical profiler, and Shinji Nishizono, a psychopath who surfaces after Kobayashi's girlfriend is dismembered and left alive in a cooler. 5 years later, released from prison, he hunts killers linked to a shadowy network embedding barcodes in victims' eyes, a twisted signature connecting crimes to a genetic experiment involving a 1960s terrorist. When the manga was adapted into a 2000 TV miniseries, the producer hired Takashi Miike, one of the most visceral and graphic filmmakers ever to work in Japan. His adaptation was, as predicted, gruesome and grotesque.
その辺にどうしてもこだわりが出てきて、自分たちが幸せになるためには何かを落とさなければ、切ってなければ。
The series opens with a killer crafting human flower pots by hollowing out their skulls for plants. From there, it gets more violent and more disturbing. Pregnant women are sliced open, bodies combust spontaneously, high school girls leap en masse from rooftops. Miike shot the whole thing on low-budget digital video, layering scenes with pixelated distortions. But when the show was released, critics thought the blurs were for censorship reasons. Actually, they were an artistic choice, a meta jab at Japan's broadcast restrictions. By intentionally concealing mutilation, Miike pushes the viewers to imagine horrors worse than anything his visuals could convey. And you have to admit, Miike tries to convey some serious horrors.
だから、なんて言うんだろう、審査するっていうか、営林の人たち、うまく褒められるものを作って、いいものを作りたいんじゃなくて。
The manga's explicit violence earned it an 18+ rating, but Miike pushed further. A cult surgically implants barcodes into eyeballs. A gang leader carves numbers into severed limbs. He wants the audience to feel deeply disturbed by what is unfolding before them.
今までの自分たちの仕事も含めてやってきたことを全部壊しちゃうような。
And through all of the chaos, we get glimpses of Kobayashi's instability. His personas battling for control while confronting killers who mirror his own splintered minds. Miike wanted to make the audience feel that, so he incorporated jarring, unpredictable edits, hypnosis-induced murders, and a rock soundtrack by fictional 1960s terrorist Lucy Monostone. It was such a barrage of violence, noise, and blood that critics called it style over substance. Yet its relentless pacing and unanswered questions are the kind of fever dream that Miike thrives on. He wants to disturb, and he does exactly that. Utopia. Channel 4's Utopia was a bold thriller that was so unapologetically divisive it inevitably left a mark on British television when it debuted in 2013. The show opened with the murder of a man within the first minute of this weirdly humorous, surreal, and saturated world, immediately establishing the bizarre tone to come. At its core, Utopia followed a group of strangers who stumbled upon a mysterious graphic novel, The Utopia Experiments, rumored to predict global catastrophes.
It's a graphic novel. It's called The Utopia Experiments.
Their discovery placed them in the crosshairs of the Network, a shadowy organization bent on population control through chillingly extreme measures.
And will have potential for mortality rates in the hundreds of thousands. We've made a thorough report.
The series stood out for its unique visual style with vivid colors and unsettling camera angles and an anxiety-inducing soundtrack. But what truly set it apart and made it unforgettably unsettling was its unflinching portrayal of violence. From graphic torture scenes to moments of implied child murder, Utopia pushed boundaries that many viewers found hard to stomach. One of the most infamous sequences involves Wilson Wilson, a conspiracy theorist, being tortured with sand, bleach, and a kitchen utensil. A scene so harrowing that fans knew it only as the spoon scene.
I've got the spoon now, Wilson. Calm down.
But the most controversial moment came in episode 3 of season 1, a school shooting carried out by an assassin working for the Network. Even though most of the violence happened off-screen, the implications were deeply disturbing to many viewers. The sequence aired just weeks after the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy, prompting 37 complaints to Ofcom and sparking widespread outrage from those who felt the show was somehow exploiting the shooting, despite having been produced long before the massacre. Channel 4 canceled the show after 2 seasons, citing poor ratings and high production costs. The show's graphic content likely alienated casual audiences, making it a cult favorite, but an unsustainable investment for mainstream television. Level 6. To Catch a Predator. In a quiet suburban home, hidden cameras rolled as various men arrived expecting to meet minors for sex. Instead, they found a fully adult man with a camera crew and an arrest warrant.
Drop your bag. Drop your bag.
Yes, sir.
Drop your bag.
Thank you. I didn't knew this would happen. How you doing?
Oh, wow. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
That's basically the premise of To Catch a Predator. Between 2004 and 2008, Dateline NBC had partnered with the watchdog group Perverted Justice to orchestrate sting operations targeting adults soliciting minors online. Decoys would pose as 12 or 13-year-olds in chat rooms, luring suspects to staged sting houses, where the host, Chris Hansen, would confront and interrogate them before police moved in.
But there were condoms, spermicide, lubricant, Plan B to prevent a pregnancy.
Yeah, for anyone that, yeah.
Yeah. Why so many things like this?
The arrests that followed were highly traumatic, usually involving drawn tasers. The whole show was built around this clash of journalism and police intervention, which made for a very strange mix that led to a lot of people questioning the show's ethics. The most infamous case unfolded in 2006 when Bill Conrad, a Texas assistant district attorney, exchanged explicit messages with a decoy but refused to visit the sting house. With their show basically guaranteed no drama, NBC allegedly pressured police to raid Conrad's home with their cameras in tow. As officers breached his door, Conrad shot himself, his final moments captured by the crew. Conrad's sister sued NBC for $105 million, accusing the network of reckless intrusion into police work, which was a very popular criticism of the show.
As those taken by your employees, which were set in motion by a self-appointed group acting as judge, jury, and executioner. That was encouraged by an out-of-control reality show.
In fact, many critics argued the show prioritized ratings over justice, with some suspects avoiding prosecution due to jurisdictional gaps or entrapment claims. They didn't have evidence it was even them for much of the show. Legal experts questioned if the decoys' aggressive tactics crossed into entrapment, while families of suspects had to deal with increased public shaming. Advertisers withdrew support as additional footage revealed NBC's heavy involvement in raids, including an officer coldly quipping, "That'll make good TV," after Conrad's
Oh, man, I wasn't doing anything. Get his keys. I wasn't doing anything.
Even though host Chris Hansen claimed the show ran its course, the show's 2008 cancellation coincided with mounting lawsuits and ethical scrutiny. Even though it had exposed real predators, the show's highly sensationalized approach of prioritizing ambush drama over due process was just too questionable for many to get on board with. Even Chris Hansen's later projects like Hansen vs. Predator couldn't escape the shadow of this show, which seemed to prioritize humiliation over accountability. Wonder Chosen. Before every episode, a warning would blare. Wonder Chosen contained offensive, despicable content too soul-crushing for children. That was accurate. Wonder Chosen was an MTV2 series created by Vernon Chapman and John Lee, which was built around the premise, what if Sesame Street tackled the real issues? The show took the aesthetic of child-friendly puppet shows like Sesame Street and used it to satirize serious problems like capitalism, racism, and American hypocrisy.
White people, yay!
White people having fun. Global domination over everyone.
Puppets like Clarence ambushed New Yorkers with weird questions while adults yanked his eyeballs or slammed his mouth shut in frustration.
What do you think democracy smells like? It smells like what comes out of my...
Chauncey, a manic yellow puppet, hosted segments where he tripped balls on liquid imagination, or where puppets reenacted slavery with a cyborg slave lynched by a monkey. It wasn't suitable for children, basically. The show's Beat Kids, real children reciting scripted lines, asked Wall Street workers,
Who did you exploit today?
And marched through DC dressed as Hitler to ask about the youth of today. That segment sparked so much outrage from the Anti-Defamation League that MTV had to pull the episode. All of this was designed to cause as much controversy as possible, but Clarence's street confrontations were so frustrating that they escalated to physical attacks on the crew, with one man nearly throwing the puppet into traffic.
Now you're harassing me. No. You're harassing me. Leave me alone.
At first, MTV gave the creators leeway, but backlash soon mounted as the content got more and more extreme. By 2006, after 16 episodes, Wonder Chosen vanished from the airwaves entirely.
Goodbye.
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 Cancelled by MTV for fear that the creators would somehow go further. Hawaii Five-0. In January 1970, Hawaii Five-0 aired an episode that vanished from television history altogether. Bored, She Hung Herself followed Steve McGarrett's investigation into the death of Wanda Parker, a yoga student found hanged. While it's initially framed as a the plot later reveals that her neighbor murdered her using a dangerous yoga technique designed to induce temporary asphyxiation, a practice her boyfriend claimed could enhance spiritual energy. The episode aired only once and was never included in ND syndication deals, with no explanation given at first. But decades later, former cast members and crew alleged a viewer attempted to replicate the fictional hanging method and died, prompting a lawsuit against CBS. Joel Berliner, who played a minor role in the episode, claimed the network settled out of court and agreed to shelve the episode permanently in the deal. No public records or court documents corroborate the lawsuit or death, but everyone from the cast members to crew members and the creator's widow maintains that it's true. When Hawaii Five-0 hit DVD, Season's 2 packaging explicitly noted the exclusion of Bored She Hung Herself, calling it a response to viewer reaction. Even the complete series box set omitted it. Bootleg copies leaked online reveal a poorly acted, narratively weak installment, with critics calling it one of the series' worst. Yet its absence makes it all the more appealing for those who are curious. Box. In a dimly lit studio, couples entered a soundproof box to have sex while a live audience waited outside. This was the premise of an actual show called Box, a short-lived 2015 reality series adapted from the British original.
In a few minutes, a couple will enter this box, they'll have and in front of our studio audience.
The show featured couples grappling with intimacy issues. Hosted by relationship therapist Fran Walfish and a panel of experts, including a pastor and a comedian, the show claimed to help pairs repair relationships by having them engage in on-stage intercourse, then discuss their issues post-sex under hot lights and a lot of cameras.
Can we agree you're not going to do this?
I can't guarantee that.
The British original was part of Channel 4's Campaign for Real Sex, which aimed to counter influence. but the concept itself was widely criticized as being awkward and gimmicky, something the American reboot planned to correct. The US version leaned harder into spectacle, seeing the silk-robed couples emerge from a pink-lit box to dissect performance, desire, and their marital issues. One episode featured a husband pushing for threesomes, another a postpartum mother reigniting her sex drive.
I'm just concerned about really not caring anymore.
All of this was hailed by WeTV as respectable therapy, but critics called it pandering to the lowest common denominator, and conservative groups found it totally unforgivable. The Parents Television Council amassed 38,000 signatures demanding the show's immediate cancellation, labeling it a live show that forced cable subscribers to fund offensive content. The backlash tapped into growing frustrations at the time over bundled cable packages, with activists arguing viewers shouldn't subsidize sleaze for channels they didn't want in the first place. WeTV clearly loved that, countering by linking to the petition on its website, taunting critics to watch before you judge.
I think it's important for viewers to watch the show because I think the concept of box will open up a much broader discussion.
Those who did watch weren't convinced. Ratings plummeted to 378,000 viewers, and advertisers fled in massive numbers. Despite WeTV's claims of sincerity, even participants admitted the therapy felt secondary to the box's voyeuristic appeal. After 5 episodes, the network pulled the plug, citing poor reception but teasing a reformatted revival that never materialized. The box remained sealed. Level 7. Joy Junction. For over 2 decades, Joy Junction entertained children with puppet skits and Bible lessons and a whole lot of fun and mayhem. But the show was hiding a very, very horrific truth beneath its wholesome appearance.
Hello and welcome to Joy Junction. I've got the contestants right here. They're ready for our first game.
Launched in 1979 by Florida's Christian television network, the show starred Sheriff Don and a cast of quirky characters teaching morality and Christianity to kids aged 4 to 13. Every episode blended live-action lessons with animated segments, urging viewers to write in to take part in religious activities.
Language. And do you know that's exactly what the Bible says in Ephesians 4:29?
One member of the regular cast was Ronald William Brown, a puppeteer whose ventriloquist act with a dummy named Marty warned children about the dangers of evil thoughts and
They were looking at some dirty pictures and they wanted me to look too. You should run away from anything that will give you evil thoughts.
Brown became one of the show's most beloved figures, which just made the truth more harrowing. Behind the scenes, he hosted pizza parties for neighborhood kids, volunteered at Gulf Coast Church, and ran a puppet ministry, all things that seemed totally in line with the role he played on the show, but he had a secret.
They'd come with their bikes and their skateboards and they'd hang out waiting for him to come home.
Brown had amassed a significant collection of child and would fantasize about kidnapping and cannibalizing young boys like the ones he supposedly mentored. His position on the show meant he escaped suspicion for a long time.
He is Ronald William Brown, and he is accused of possessing child and conspiring to kidnap a child.
But in 1998, police found boys' underwear in his car, which he claimed were props for Marty's act. He was immediately questioned, but the result of the interrogation remains a mystery. However, over a decade later, in 2012, federal agents uncovered Brown's dark web chats with Michael Arnett, the Kansas man who himself was later convicted of producing child abuse material. Their exchanges detailed plans to abduct a specific boy from Brown's church, with Brown labeling photos of the child to diagram steaks and shanks for the meals they imagined having with his corpse. Investigators found journals dating back to 1978, before Joy Junction, which just confirmed these violent urges happened before and during the time he was guiding America's children. Authorities seized hundreds of images from Brown's devices, including photos of children in bondage, dead toddlers, and memorial photos of a brain tumor victim from his congregation. Even though he pleaded guilty to child charges, Brown insisted his chats were fantasy, even as evidence proved he discussed murder methods and cannibalism rituals.
Brown told them all of it was just a fantasy. It's stuff he says he would never actually do in real life.
He died in prison in 2020, but the damage lingered. Joy Junction had been off the air for years by the time Brown was caught, its episodes scrubbed from networks and archives, but surviving clips show Brown lecturing kids about purity, all while hiding his own library of depravity. The Honey Boo Boo Show. Here Comes Honey Boo Boo began as a pretty typical exploitative TLC reality series, chronicling the lives of 6-year-old Alana Honey Boo Boo Thompson and her working-class Georgia family.
I'm Alana, I'm 6, and I'm a beauty queen. The other girls must be crazy if they think they're gonna be me, Honey Boo Boo Child.
It was a spin-off of the hugely successful Toddlers and Tiaras, but this show would focus less on the pageantry and beauty shows and more on Southern stereotypes, framing the Thompsons' quirks as a spectacle. Literally. The family enjoyed roadkill meals, crude humor, and Alana's pre-pageant go-go juice, which was actually a Red Bull Mountain Dew mix widely criticized for its caffeine content, and presented it as if this was their daily normal life. Obviously, critics hated the show from the beginning, accusing TLC of exploiting the family's poverty and eccentricities for profit, even using subtitles to mock their accents and editing scenes to emphasize redneck tropes. None of it brought the show down. But in 2014, reports surfaced that Honey Boo Boo's mom, Mama June Shannon, had reconnected with her ex-boyfriend, Mark McDaniel, a convicted child molester who served 10 years for aggravated molestation of June's eldest daughter, Anna Chickadee Cardwell, in 2003. Anna was 8 years old when the incident happened, later revealing that McDaniel abused her while June was at work, with her younger sister, Lauren, witnessing the assault as it happened. The situation was so controversial that TLC abruptly canceled the show without hesitation, stating the children's welfare was their only priority, though a full season of unaired episodes had already been filmed. Critics who had raised concerns about the family's treatment were happy to see just how right they were. June's parenting had been horrific and all caught on camera, feeding Honey Boo Boo the caffeine-laden go-go juice and her relentless focus on bodily functions and innuendo in front of and toward her kids. Now it was out for the whole world to see. June denied ever dating McDaniel, but admitted their past ties, while Anna publicly condemned her mother's choices. The damage was irreparable. The show that had been mocked for being exploitative was now revealing that Mama June was the most exploitative of all. Roslan's shooting. It's rare to hear about an Iraqi TV show, but Roslan's shooting was not your usual entertainment show. The show aired during Ramadan 2021 and lured celebrities into scenarios mimicking real-life terrorist violence. You heard that right. Participants would walk into elaborate traps set by the crew, only to be ambushed by actors posing as militants, strapped with fake vests, or subjected to mock kidnappings at gunpoint. One episode left actress Zora Gondor unconscious after she collapsed in terror while being fitted with prop explosives. Football star Ala Maui, blindfolded and convinced he'd been abducted by extremists, begged for his life on camera. The show was pushing these people beyond their breaking point. But the whole time, the show's creators defended the stunts as satire, with writer Dargam Abu Argif arguing they highlighted Iraq's resilience post-ISIS. Nobody agreed with that. Viewers were horrified, social media erupted in disgust over footage of visibly traumatized guests, many shaking or sobbing even after the joke was revealed. Families of ISIS victims labeled the pranks as a slap in the face, pointing out that militants still launch sporadic attacks.
It's inappropriate humor that belittles a serious issue. Also, television has a direct effect on the audience who tend to imitate what they watch.
Iraq's media regulator banned Roslin's shooting within weeks, citing violations of broadcast ethics. But the show was even worse than anything I have described so far. The crew had used military-grade pyrotechnics and hired former soldiers to play insurgents, escalating the realism to a level that was far beyond any prank could have attained. Participants weren't warned about the intensity of the scenarios whatsoever, meaning they had no chance to raise warnings about health issues. Advertisers fled in massive numbers. By the time regulators revoked its license, episodes had already been pulled from streaming platforms. Residual clips circulating on Telegram show guests vomiting or hyperventilating post-prank, with one man needing to be sedated. If you're still looking for more twisted icebergs, check out this video about the most disturbing movie accidents.